Welcome everyone to our 2024 series of ongoing OTF Connects webinars. My name is Peter Beans and I'm honored to be your moderator for today's session with Zan Woods and Amanda Potts entitled Cultivating Community and Collaboration via Digital Media Literacy, a project-based approach to ENL1W. Before we begin, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge first and foremost that we are gathered in the province of Ontario on the traditional territories of various Indigenous peoples who have been present on this land known as Turtle Island since time immemorial. We acknowledge that this has been a meeting ground for generations. We are grateful to the stewards and caretakers of this land. As advocates, teachers, and educators, we understand our collective responsibility to honor, protect, and sustain this land. We further recognize and honor within the membership of OTF those who are Indigenous to this land. This practice of recognizing the ancestral and traditional lands in which we work, live, and play is a concrete action that we undertake as a first step towards reconciliation between Canadians and the Indigenous peoples of this land. But it is not our only step. Collectively and individually, we must seek to denounce the injustices and wrongs that have been committed against the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and to dedicate ourselves to cultivating and maintaining relationships based on mutual respect and truth. So please allow me to introduce Alexandra Woods. Zan, as she likes to be called, is a secondary literacy coach with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. She works with teachers across subjects and schools to support cross-curricular, school-wide literacy planning. She's also deeply engaged in supporting fellow educators to embed the science of reading into authentic learning experiences, including digital media projects. And our second presenter, Amanda Potts. Amanda teaches English in the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. This semester, she's teaching grade 9 English and writer's craft, exploring how to integrate students' experiences with media in the classroom. She believes that reading is an equity issue. She always tries to match the right book to the right student and spends a lot of time insisting that good writing is really a matter of practice. And sometimes students even believe her. Cute. So over to Zan and Amanda. So I will stop sharing.
I just wanted to say welcome, everyone. We're so happy you're here and recognizing that it's a really busy time of year. So thanks for taking the time to join and learn and collaborate with us today. So as Peter mentioned, our webinar is entitled Cultivating Community and Collaboration via Digital Media Literacy. And these are our details. If you're interested in connecting with us after, I know we'd be happy to hear from you and hear about all the wonderful things that you're doing. So as Peter mentioned, my name is Zan Woods, and I'm currently working as a secondary literacy coach with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. And I often frequent the classroom of Amanda Potts, who I've been learning from for years and years, and who's an amazing mentor to me. So Amanda, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself as well.
I'm Amanda Potts, and I've been teaching for a long time. Too long? No, not too long, never too long. I am now mostly teaching English, and I've taught a lot of other subjects. Yeah, and I'm teaching ENL1W, and I'm constantly experimenting with ways to make it engaging, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Thank you.
Also, I just want to say I did put my Twitter handle. I can barely say X, and I am almost completely off of Twitter, so I'm trying. That's not the best place to connect with me. So anyway, we can go on.
So we have some learning goals today. So we're really hoping that by the end of the session, you'll leave with a unit idea that meaningfully integrates strand A of the ENL1W curriculum. Also that you'll have an understanding of how engaging with digital literacy can foster listening, collaboration, and community, despite what we might think. And also with a metacognitive tool that supports students to understand and reflect on their learning. So this afternoon, we're going to begin with the why. So why do we need to cultivate community and collaboration in our classrooms? Then we're going to move to the what. So Amanda is going to share some of the work that she's been doing, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can use digital literacy in that strand A of the ENL1W to engage, extend, and enhance community and collaboration. And then Amanda's going to go into a little more detail around this unit that you can take with you and roll out into the classroom.
So one of the
Amanda, you
things
want to, yeah.
we want to introduce is something that I do in all of my classes now. If you don't know Project Zero's Thinking Routines Toolbox, it's an excellent toolbox resource. And I must say these questions in my classroom, gosh, 2 or 3 times every period. What do you notice? What do you wonder? What else do you want to know? So we're reading something. I say, so what did you notice? It's a really powerful way to frame. You don't have to choose that one. They have lots, but by doing this over and over, I find that it's one of the routines that helps my class function. So we wanted to try it a little bit here, and prompt you with these same questions as we go through. So what do you notice? What do you wonder? What else do you want to know? All right. And here we go.
Yeah.
Here are some images. Jen, do we tell them where they're from? No. Okay.
No,
So
we're just
what do
going to
you
give you the
notice?
images.
What do you
So we're going to,
notice?
yeah.
And you can
So you can
either put it
type,
in the chat or you can unmute, whatever.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, now that I see it up close, I notice that the writing is showing through the quote. So what do you notice here? You know the context of what we're doing today. I know.
Focus.
You won't be wrong. This is what I tell my students. You can't be wrong. You just notice
Focus.
things.
Focus, sorry.
Hmm.
Okay, so you notice focus. Yeah, okay. Anybody else? You can unmute. Feel free to unmute. Notice students engaging in community.
Oh, interesting. Uh-huh.
Okay, nice. Anything else?
Reminds me of the difference between listening and hearing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, interesting.
you
Rachel,
want
I see inclusion. Can you say more?
Sure. I think like I'm noticing in the top right corner, there's the like all cultures, all genders, all orientations, all beliefs, all religions, all ages, all people. Like to me, that speaks to inheritance, inclusion.
It was interesting. We did this with a couple of people earlier today, and they said, "Oh, it's interesting. Like I noticed that, but I wonder if that's just left there. If it's part of part of classroom clutter that's just been left there. Is it actively used, right?" So when you do an activity like what do you notice? It can also be around the language that's used or any connection. So I see Paula's writing anchor charts.
And I thought some of those words are a little triggering. Oh, you feel free to type more. Active listening, Jenna. I'm assuming you're looking at the picture, maybe? And it, yeah. What do you think, Stan? Should we move on to the what do we wonder?
Sure.
So what do you wonder? Yeah.
So any questions you have related to what you see?
Whose heritage is important in our schools? Yes. Great wonder. Is there a word study connection? Nice.
Mm. So it looks to be positive and cheerful
Poster for
light streaming
autistic
through.
students.
Yeah, I wonder what the context is with so few students. Yeah. So is this small group instruction? Is it a class project? So you can also wonder about potentially, thinking about connections between the words and between what might be happening.
Rachel, I'm just laughing. I must refer to that poster every day. That's my grade 9s are like, you know, I can't do it because you won't be able to see me, but I have a 15-year-old who lives in my house, and the ability to like slump over a desk as though you're melting into the floor from boredom is unparalleled in 14 and 15-year-olds. I'm always impressed. So we use this a lot.
And this is a really nice activity, like entry point for every student, right? Because first of all, you're giving them an opportunity to have conversations about content or about a text that you might be exploring. So showing a picture and what's going on in this picture, something like that, and then getting them to start to engage with some of the vocabulary and the language that they might actually be reading about later can be very powerful, or reading about in multiple forms, in multimodal forms. But it's also very basic. Like, you know, students could say, oh, I noticed that there's chalk, like somebody's written with chalk on the chalkboard, right? Or, oh, I noticed that that quote seems to talk about listening. And then the students are also listening on the side, right? So there's multiple entry points when you do what do you notice and what do you wonder. And sometimes that silence that you have in the class is actually okay because it's providing that thinking time and space. And if you do it a few times, students feel much more comfortable with it. So I'm noticing
And like I
again.
say, I do it all the time. I also do turn and talk, a lot of seat, like partner or elbow partner. The heritage and heirloom is interesting. And Eunice, I noticed you said that, but the school that I teach in has an enormous number of newcomers. And so before we go into the identity work that we do, I want to make sure that people know that they do have an inheritance or a heritage. They do have, you know, what is the difference between an heirloom and so yeah, it's important to me to make sure that people understand that their stories are valuable before we get very far. Otherwise, we run into those exact problems. So I think we should go on, Zan.
Yeah, sure. So the last question is, what more do you want to know? But we've already talked a little bit about this, but this is kind of, we're serving as our launch pad for a discussion around some of the incredible work that Amanda's doing in her ENL1W class, which connects to all of these pieces, to identity, to active listening, and also to thinking about the stories that we tell, and the inheritance maybe in words, not necessarily objects, that we receive from others. So we're going to jump in now. So we wanted to start with the why. So why do we need to cultivate community and collaboration in our classrooms today? And probably if you're teaching in a classroom, you know this very well, that students are grappling with multiple challenging, divisive issues, and that our political environment is really highly polarized. And daily, we're confronted with information about war, systemic racism, LGBTQIA+ rights, abortion access, the climate crisis, and more. And the social media environment creates even more divisiveness. So we're confronted with this constant polarization. And you can add to that disruptive nature of being a teenager and trying to find your own beliefs. Who am I? What do I believe? What is my value? Do I fit in? It was interesting. Last week, I was having a conversation with a teacher who said, you know, that they used to be able to come into class and, you know, everybody would talk about the last night's Friends episode. And today there's no such thing as a shared understanding. And although it's good to have multiple perspectives, we want multiple identities, and we're learning so much, and we want to make sure that that's there. We also want students to feel community and collaboration in the class. So one foothold in this overwhelming environment is helping students to listen and connect and feel communities with others. So we thought this quotation was relevant to the ENL1W context, but also to all classes at the secondary level. Just that educators need to address the various anxieties being raised and the plethora of sources and media that feed competing mindsets. Educators might begin by creating spaces that foster dialogue, understanding, self-reflection, and mutual respect, where conversations can occur that are not dismissive, but instead draw out beliefs and antecedents to the anxieties that exist among people. So just framing our why with these, we need to provide that space for students to build community.
So moving from that why, one of the things that I recognized was that my students are coming in ostensibly bored, but actually quite anxious. And especially in the post-COVID world, I find them very anxious in different ways. I wanted to think about a course that could help our students learn to listen to other voices, not just immediately react, that pause between thought and meaning. I wanted them to recognize the power of their story and other people's stories. And I framed it with them as, how do we build our identities? Not who am I? They're worried about who they're going to become. So what goes into my identity? What goes into other people's identity? And how does digital media help us create those identities? So tried to do a positive framing. Go on. Oh, we lost it. To do that, I start the year with, or the semester, and I've only been, like, I change it all the time. Zan, are you still sharing your screen?
I thought it was. Let me try again.
I don't think so. But I start the year, this semester, and it'll change. It changes constantly. But right now I'm starting with a Where I'm From poem. But I take the Where I'm From and I use a couple of more modern ones. There's one from England with a voice of a young girl of color. There's an Indigenous Where I'm From. Students write their own, and then they write a collaborative Where I'm From poem. In other words, they do one for the class, and it gets them up out of their seat. They have to talk. From there, they start to think about their own stories. They do a 100-word memoir, and then after they've gotten used to sharing stories with each other, we move into this unit, Humans of Gloucester, that is what I'm doing today. So we can keep going. And Zan, I think
So we
have
wanted to give
moving. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we wanted to give you a wee bit of theory, just to ground some of the work that Amanda is doing. So as you mentioned, we think about digital media literacy as something that can be highly divisive, but there are some theories that actually have looked at the power of digital media literacy in order to preserve linguistic and ethnic diversity, and also contribute to community building as well as engagement in critical conversations. So McDaniel has created a theoretical framework or a pedagogical framework, which draws on culturally digitized pedagogy as an asset-based and culturally responsive pedagogy. So the author builds on Goldie Mohammed's work around identity and joy and cultivating that criticality, and really tries to use that and to extend her notion of writing to multimodal forms of digital expression. So really this culturally digitized pedagogy is really about emphasizing the importance of engaging youth in navigating their evolving identities and their lives in online spaces, and using that in the production of some of these multimedia writings in order to kind of express and preserve diversity and also engage students in critical conversations. Some other, a wee bit more theory, there's a digital literacies framework which was developed in Australia and actually focused more on ML learners, but this is very similar to, I think, about adolescent learning. When we use digital media or technology, we want students to be engaged in tasks that are situated and authentic. We want them to be solving real world problems. We want to take a strength-based approach to honor their identities and who they are and their knowledge and skills and what they have to bring to that project. And then we really want to cultivate their ability to understand how to use the technology, as well as what informs our use of the technology, which relates to this 3D model of digital literacy. And so how do we apply this, this theory to our practice? So Amanda and I in the past have drawn on the EEE framework, which really centers instructional strategies. And the notion is we want to use technology to enhance, extend, and engage learning. So it's not something that's being given to students to do something on their own, that's individualized, that's away from the actual learning. It's something that's used to really bolster their learning and their critical thinking. And so we're going to share a checklist with you afterwards, which we've used before in the class. So when you're using some form of technology, it's a checklist where you can consider, does it enhance the learning? Does it extend the learning? Does it engage the students?
So in the class that I'm teaching, I've decided to center story. And here you can see some quotes about story. And the goal here is not necessarily we read them all. You can read them later. I use the Thomas King quote in the upper left, however, all the time. The truth about stories is that that's all we are. The idea of stories is a heritage, an inheritance that we can share no matter where we're from. And here we have a Cherokee author, a Cree author, a Black Canadian who's actually talking about stories in China. Faced with what we share and what separates us, we decide in the moment to seek out the common or deny it, to succumb to a sense of familiarity or its opposite. We measure the gulf of experience between ourselves and another, and we decide how, if at all, we will allow it to matter. So, then we can go on. This is what we talk about in class. This is how I get them to read. The Humans of unit, the one that we're going to be talking about, or that we are talking about, was inspired by both StoryCorps and Humans of New York. StoryCorps is an interview project that runs through National Public Radio in the US, and Humans of New York is on Instagram, and they have several books. Both of them are about talking to other people, listening to what they have to say, choosing part of that to share, and then sharing it. So the goal of the unit is for students to listen to someone else's story and choose how to represent that person in a social media post. So they have to listen, they have to select things and omit things with an awareness of audience. They have to create it for multimedia, and then they have to edit it. As I say, I don't put things up that haven't been spell checked. They actually practice quite a bit. We conduct an interview, take a picture, get a permission form, select part of it, and then share it online in a teacher mediated space. So I do the posting on Instagram to an account called Humans of Gloucester. So that is the project. And it seems simple. Well, I don't know if it seems simple. It seems straightforward to me, but it's actually quite a lot of moving pieces for the kids. Suzanne, we can go on. This is literally the step-by-step. 826 Digital. So I start off with, why are other people's stories important? We've already talked about ours and how the stories we tell about ourselves influence who we are. Depending on the class, I can do the inheritance. We do a day of inheritance, like what gets inherited. We read some stories. Or Edpuzzle has different interviews, TED Talks by David Isay or Brandon, who did the guy who does Humans of New York. I can't remember his last name, starts with an S. And then in class, they listen to different interviews. Sometimes I do a form and they have to fill them in. Sometimes we listen to them together, we discuss, we talk about what makes an effective interview, and then the magic starts. They have to practice interviewing other people. So they grab phones. We brought our link leaders. They're the older students who help welcome the grade 9s. And they came in, and that was the small group picture you saw. The students practiced interviewing grade 12 students. So the grade 9s were interviewing grade 12s and recording it and thinking about it. Sometimes they interview teachers who come in. I also have them interview someone else in the class, like turn to your neighbor and interview. We discuss whether it was easier to be the interviewer or the interviewee. We go look at Humans of New York. Zan, do you think it's worth showing a Humans of New York? Do people know Humans of New York? I don't know. Just in case, Humans of New York is on Instagram, it's online, and it has pictures and very short blurbs. So I will say that some Humans of New York posts are not ideal for classrooms. You never know what you're going to get on a given day. So I've chosen some that I think are safer, like this one. Made sure we had food, made sure we had clothes, made sure we had a roof over our heads. Electricity may have been cut off a couple of times, but we always had somewhere to go. Mama always came through. So we can go back to the thing. So this is a slideshow that we've shared with you. And this is one that we talk about. We talk about what we know and don't know, what else might be true about these people. I have another slideshow here that is think about what the images tell us, where we just look at the pictures and try to imagine the story that might go along with them. So, you know, what do you imagine the text is? Why do you think that Humans of New York took this picture? And what do you think they might have talked about that didn't make the cut? Suzanne, if you scroll down like 2 for there. There you go. They like this one. They like that one. They like them all. It's fun. So we can go back. All we're doing here is looking critically at digital media, things that are shared, and starting that, I think, all important awareness that everything that is online has been created. It's been shaped. There are things here that are choices that somebody made. It's never the whole story. The thinking about audience when you're putting things online, what are you doing? So now they have to prepare for their interview. They have a list of questions from StoryCorps, but you can't go in with all these questions. We practice doing follow-up questions. We practice doing, so this is, and it's quite difficult for grade 9. So like they really want to do a 2-minute interview, which is hilarious. I'm like, no, that's not enough. They just want to get a story and get out. I'm just going to get one story, miss. But no, the practice in really sitting and listening, leaning forward, being quiet, because they do practice interviews in small groups and such, they get better. Then they take a picture. They have to get a permission form, and I didn't link it. You can make one. I have a permission form. So if they use the picture of a minor and put their face, they have to have a written permission form. We transcribe. We're using AI and other stuff to transcribe. It's kind of iffy right now. I didn't link to anything because I'm not so good at that part. Then they have to choose which part of the interview to share, format it, and share it. So Zan, can you click on the posts online? And this is our current Instagram feed. Also, a bunch of kids from the school follow it. So you can see it's just pictures, but if you click on the picture of the first boy, some of them go interview teachers. Oh no, you have to log in.
I don't remember what my login is.
It's okay. I put it in later. I left it on the slides.
Okay.
You all can you're going to have to go look yourself. What's fascinating about that first picture is the child looks quite happy. Yeah, it is in there. If you scroll down, there he is, 19. There we go. So just click on it. There you go. The quote that the interviewer chose is, "My brain doesn't absorb knowledge easily. It's not a sponge for knowledge. I have to squeeze it into the brain. The knowledge has to be compacted and ground and destroyed and compacted again, and then rebuilt into my head. How do I get through it? I just have to tell myself that once I'm an adult, I won't have to walk into a classroom ever again." We talk about the links and the hashtags we're going to use. I try to remember them all, but sometimes I mess them up. And then this student chose to take a picture of her friend, and she purposely chose a happy picture because she said she was afraid that the quote would make people think that he was unhappy or having a hard time. And she said she thought it was really important to add to this idea to make him a whole person by showing him having a good time. So we can go back. And this is the kind of thinking that I want them to do. In addition, this builds our community. all of the people that they interview are people who are part of our school community, even if they're just related by, like, it's my dad or it's my brother, even if they don't go to our school. So more and more students from the school are following, a lot of teachers are following it from the school, and slowly we're beginning to hear different stories about different people that maybe they didn't know. And that's really it. Oh, I forgot to put a reflection. So that's really it. That's the project.
One of the things I want to say too, just about just being in Amanda's class is that so the first week, by the end of the first week, every single kid in that grade 9 class, even if it's 30 kids, 29 kids, whatever, they all know each other's names. So I think one of the things too is setting up, and as you mentioned, Amanda, this is like, you start with the where I'm from, right? And you get them to build that class community poem. So they're getting to know each other by working on a collaborative poem. But they also feel that connectedness. And then they move into a little deeper reflection on the 100-word memoir. And then they move into this. And by the time they're doing this, it's amazing to see this community gel. And part of that also is there is that accountability. I'm going to have to produce something that's outward facing, that's digital, right?
So
and
Sam,
making those kind of choices.
You might hit slideshow. The person being interviewed must give consent. Yes, it's absolutely mandatory. They have to be okay with it. So if you're interviewing an adult, I figure a fair number will interview a parent. I'm less concerned, mostly because, if you interviewed your mom, but they're supposed to show it to the parent or the other person. If the person is a student or a minor, they have to have written consent. And that's part of what we learn is you can't just put whatever you want up there. You really have to think about it. How will this look in the long run? The other thing that I will say is that it has to go online. There's no option to not have it go up because they have to be thinking about the community that they're building. And I also get, like, this is a good one. Of course I showed a good one, but there's a girl who just turned in a picture where she just took like an eraser and scribbled through the other person's face. And I'm not going to put that up until she changes it. There's nice ways to cover up someone's face if you want to do that, but none of them are take a thing and scribble them out. So, yeah, but they have to have permission, and they have to build, it's a conscious choice to build our community.
I'm going to move
they
ahead.
know that also the community poem that they write, they then work in small groups, and they actually put it into a poster, and we print them and put them up in the school. So they get used to this idea of facing out. Zan, you can go.
Yeah, so I wanted to just share because I was in Amanda's class when the grade 9s invited the link crew, so the grade 11s and 12s down, and they were interviewing. They were practicing this process of interviewing them. And I just asked a couple of students after, I said, can I just interview you about your experience being interviewed? And I just want to share a couple of these videos because they're very powerful. I think they'll speak for themselves.
We can't hear it, Zan. We can just let people watch them later. I'm sorry.
We tried to work this out before, but I don't know if it.
Try again.
Can you hear it? No. Okay.
We can do it. People can watch it on their own. The grade 12s themselves they kept saying, I can't believe what they got me to talk about. I can't believe that they.
Guys in the bath, or he's like, he's gonna drive your car. The man has no gas. And I'm like, put gas in it. What was that? He's right there.
Lindsay, you've unmuted, Lindsay.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the grade 12s were really blown away by what they felt. Like they felt heard. They couldn't believe that grade 9s were able to ask them questions and such. Yeah, Zan, I don't know how to help with that one. I'm so sorry.
Want me to try from my end?
Sure.
Sure, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah,
In the meantime, I can say, Zan, if you'll go down while Peter's working on that to slide 29. You can see here, and I've linked somewhere else, but this, where we're from, is one of the outward facing things. This is one of the posters the kids made, and then our print shop printed it up, and our vice principal hung one in like, we've got them hanging, different groups posters hang in vice principal's office and principal's offices, that seeing themselves represented in the school with lines that they wrote is very powerful. The other two things here are things that Zan did when she was in the classroom, where they made songs about where they're from. Again, that outward face. So, Peter, any luck?
Yep, I'll start sharing now.
Okay.
Okay.
You are, Lindsay.
All right, let's.
My name is Salah.
So tell me about the experience.
Is it working?
It was a good experience. I didn't think I would answer kind of questions that would actually just wake me up. It felt like unlocking old memories. Like they asked me like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was gonna say firefighter, which is I want to be a firefighter, but I want to not make it simple. I want to be the person that helps you when you're down. I want to be the light in your life, you know?
So it made you reflect.
Yes.
Reflect more. Nice.
Yes.
And did you learn anything about yourself?
Kinda, but not a lot. But oh no.
Did you learn anything about grade 9s that you didn't know?
Oh, grade 9s. I just realized they're still they're on a journey too. Like I just thought of them as grade 9s, but the way they just talked to me, it felt like they also had the same journey as me, you know?
Would you like the next video?
Yes, please.
That'd be great.
So do you want to share a little bit about your experience being interviewed?
It was amazing. Grade 9s are usually stereotyped as the type of people who are like loud, they don't care, they're just like trying to grow up. But oh my gosh, the interview I just got, they were like listening to me, they actually like cared, they were just asking the right questions. Everything was just like fitting together. It was so opening, like I felt like people actually cared about me for once. And it was so like relaxing, and I don't know, it was just perfect for me.
Do you feel like you learned something about yourself as you were sharing those memories?
I don't know my life as well as I thought I did. I just know the type of things that were told to me. I never really kind of found out stuff about myself. But I kind of learned that like I need to kind of learn my history a bit more. Like I don't know my history too well. I should probably do that. Yeah.
What's your name?
Urud. Urud, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So just seeing that, like, and there were more as well. It was just, these grade 11s and 12s who had this very meaningful experience of feeling heard, and also reflecting on their stories and their identity and their journeys, and also finding that commonality with the grade 12 students. And it was just the power of listening and connecting in this way, and the way that Amanda builds that community is just so powerful, and you can see it through the reactions of those students. So I wanted to make sure that
I'll toot my own horn a little bit here, but I will say I get emails from mothers and fathers who've been interviewed saying that they had an amazing chat with their kid. The one I got yesterday, one of the boys in grade 9 has autism, and his brother has autism, and he decided to interview his brother about hockey. And apparently their mother was listening in, and she said it was incredible. She said they barely talk at home. And I mean, the email made me giggle, but these boys, they figured out how to do it. I did not anticipate that the being interviewed part would be so powerful. I wanted my students to learn to listen, but it turns out that they've also learned that listening brings them closer to people, and the people who are being listened to, like kids from my previous class have asked if they can be interviewed. So something is working.
Yeah. So we wanted to connect this, really make sure that you have some information about how do you roll literacy connections and applications at Strand A into digital media projects like Humans of Gloucester. And so what we were looking at is really that Strand A. And I don't know about other educators out there, but this strand is like super powerful and there's a lot in it. And trying to determine how to really truly embed it in the tasks has been somewhat of a challenge. So what we decided to do was to think a little bit, and we're still creating this tool, so it's not complete, but it'll give you an idea of creating kind of a metacognitive tool that draws on skills from each of those three overall expectations. So the transferable skills, digital media literacy, and the applications, connections, and contributions, and turns it into a metacognitive tool that students can use throughout the unit. So what we did, instead of choosing all of the expectations beneath that strand, what we did is we chose some expectations from each of them. So from the transferable skills and the digital literacy and the identity, self, and belonging, and we created a continuum that students could use to check their understanding. So after interviewing or after having a conversation, did they develop respectful relationships with others? Did they take on various roles when working with others? So were they the interviewer or the interviewee? So they can kind of use this as something to be able to direct and check their own learning around those transferable skills, and not something that has to be used necessarily at the end of a project, but something that is embedded, because they can use it for class discussions, for interviews, they can use it for reflections, they can use it for their final projects. So we wanted to share that. The other thing that I think would be really interesting to do with this is to ask students to document their learning. So use this as a bit of a hyperlinked portfolio. So if each student has a copy of it, and then they know that they've engaged in some of these skills during a class discussion, they can use some evidence and hyperlink it into where they think they are, if they're in phase 2 or phase 3. And then that can then be used as a point of discussion or conversation with the educator. So the skills that I mentioned that we focused on for this unit, the first one was self-directed learning. We also looked at collaboration, the digital literacy, of course, and then identity, self, and belonging. The self-directed learning really has become a really important focus of my thinking recently, through this book. It's the John Hattie's latest book, where he collaborates with Nancy Frey and Douglas Fisher, and he talks about developing assessment-capable visible learners. And so Hattie's original book, which was all about visible learning and how to support teachers to be able to see the learning that students are doing in the classroom, and looking really at the impact of instructional practice. This kind of focuses more on the student, and the student being able to see their own learning and monitor the progress of their own learning. And so what we want is for students to be able to do that. And so the tool was very much informed by this book and this idea that students can be their own teacher, that they can articulate what they're learning and why, they can talk about how they're learning, and they can also think about what are their next steps in terms of that learning. So what we've done is kind of taken this concept of assessment capable of visible learners, and we've turned it into a metacognitive tool, which draws on that strand A, and allows students to be their own teacher in terms of guiding the learning and knowing why they're doing things and what the next steps are.
So I think the
Amanda,
last
do you
thing
want
to
to?
share, yeah, is the student reflections. You can look through them, but things like, it doesn't matter if it's a toddler being interviewed or a man in his 70s, you will always learn something new if you ask the right questions and listen attentively. I learned that everyone in this world has a story to tell. They just need a person to sit down and listen to them. Oh, one of the things we did this semester that was new was I asked them if they thought that individual people's stories were important, both before and after the unit, and watched them like reflect on it first and reflect on it again and watch the change. Holy moly. I learned that or mostly got reminded that there's always more than one story. For example, if there was a fight, you would have multiple stories, as in the victim, a bystander, the bully. The newcomer students are, it just seems to work. It just seems to work. It's the second time through me that I'm doing it, and I can already feel the power building in this school. I also conned all the rest of the grade 9 teachers into doing it.
Nice.
And so we're starting to see it really spread as something that people are looking forward to or thinking about. And that's really it, I think. We have time left for questions, don't we?
I guess one more thing to add really quickly is just thinking a little bit about how do we integrate some structured pieces and structured literacy into the work that we're doing. And Amanda, we've presented this on digital media literacy and how to utilize that, but there's so much reading and writing in this unit as well, because students are constantly reading mentor text, they're looking at syntactic structures, they're looking at the meaning of words, and they're unpacking morphology. So just to say that, we want students to be multimodal readers. We want them to be able to express and explore the world in a digital capacity. We also want to make sure that they can read and write in that traditional sense, so that they can have more opportunities. And because reading is an equity issue. So embedded in this, although we didn't go into it, is a ton of that structured, explicit literacy work.
Yeah. And actually the editing from transcript, which is AI generated, to Instagram post is an interesting part of the process. They have to decide how to string sentences together, make sure in the end, I think Paula asked, but you make sure in the end that what you've strung together is what the person thinks they said. And then they have to decide how to punctuate oral language, which has been very interesting, to say the least. So, and now I think, are we done? Ready for questions?
Right.
All right, there we go. What did you notice? What did you wonder? What more would you like to know?
Feel free to unmute if you like.
Yeah, and Zan, you're still sharing your screen.
Okay, I'm working on the technology. I think it's pretty embarrassing that we're presenting on digital media literacy and I'm struggling with Zoom.
I mean, Instagram isn't exactly the same as Zoom, just saying.
No, it's true.
So, yeah, if there's anything that you want that I didn't share, I will share all of it. Like I have a rubric somewhere and I have the permission form. Like I'll share everything. It's just whether or not I remembered to link it.
Is it all right
So,
if I share the link to your slides?
Please do.
And you'll just have to remember to make them public, because right
Yes.
now they're locked down.
I will do that right at this very moment.
And someone was inquiring earlier about me sharing all the links I've been popping in, and definitely I will be. I'll also be including a summary of the transcript as well, and then you'll also receive an email with the link to the evaluation form. And let me pop in a link as well to here. Just give me a second.
And the slides have been shared. So thanks, Eunice. I really want I want our students to feel valuable. And I want them to feel like what they create matters. So I'll share until the ends of time. If it's working. If it's not working, I totally hide it. Just saying.
That's not true. You talk about it, and then we
I do.
you
Okay,
collaborate
that's
with
true
others
too.
and problem solve. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Zan and Amanda, for your compelling and insightful presentation. Your practical tips on how to actively engage, such as reminding attendees to sit up, lean forward, and interact. I have been. Paired with the emphasis on the critical need for empathy and understanding through storytelling, were particularly enlightening. The triple E framework of engage, enhance, extend that you introduced serves as a robust guide for integrating technology in ways that truly enhance educational outcomes. Additionally, your focus on the power of community and the importance of empathetic connections, highlighted by the One Boy's realization of shared developmental journeys, underscores the transformative potential of digital media literacy. And with that, thank you so much. That was very good. That was very interesting.
Thank you, Peter.